Good afternoon, everyone. What? I had to bang on it to tell the television. I was instructed. Glad you all are here this afternoon for our intergovernmental agency meeting, Blueprint. And for any of you in the audience, let me get this adjusted. For any of you in the audience who wish to speak, either at the public hearing or another time, if you could fill out a speaker card. I think they're in the back. Is that correct?
They're in the back, yes.
And we have a good bit of business to conduct, but we are going to take a break at exactly 5:30 to conduct our public hearing on our budget. So we're going to try to get through as much as we can right here in the next 30 minutes, and then we'll take a break. Would you like to take it away, or you want to?
Sure. Madam Chair, the first item under your agenda is agenda modifications. Staff only has one. You will note in the material that was distributed, FSU Real Estate Foundation had the possibility for a presentation. That's going to be deferred. So that's the only modification. Beyond that, your agenda is in good standing, Madam Chair.
Are there any items from consent that have been pulled?
Not to my knowledge.
Do I hear a motion to move consent?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, we have three presentations, if you will. The first one is from the Citizens Advisory Committee. Our chair, Alan Stux, has a brief presentation for the IA.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alan Stux. I'm the chair of the Citizen Advisory Committee for 2017 Blueprint 2000. The Citizen Advisory Committee met on Thursday, September 7th, to review and consider many of the items that will be presented to the IA board today. The Citizen Advisory Committee was updated on current projects and programs for both Blueprint and the Office of Economic Vitality. The Advisory Committee members was excited to see the progress on Capital Cascade Trail and the forthcoming connection to the St. Mark Regional Trail. The Capital Advisory Committee approved the proposed meeting dates of the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency Board and associate committees. We also approved the Urban Vitality Job Pilot Program to promote economic inclusion and advancement with the promised zones. And at this meeting, we also received a presentation on the prioritization of the renaming Blueprint Infrastructure Project. Staff also presented the proposed modification the Blueprint 2020 Airport Gateway Project to create the Gateway District. The committee members look forward to the following progress of these projects. At this meeting, we also held a first public hearing for the fiscal year 2018 operating capital budget. The recommendation was approval on both budgets. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stux. Any comments? All right.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Next, we're going to hit a couple of high-level overviews. We started this at the last meeting. We want to do this at each meeting. Just provide an opportunity for the traditional Blueprint group and for the Office of Economic Vitality to just sort of paint a picture for you. What are the key things, the key highlights, if you will, that have occurred over the last quarter, and a look forward. A lot of the material is in the updates that are in your consent agenda that you've already approved, but this provides an opportunity to share this with the public and with you in this forum. So to start off that process, Charles Hargraves, I believe you have the Blueprint update, very briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Pingree. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about some of our recent successes. I don't know how many of you have been out recently, but we have completed a 4-year plus long project of Capitol Circle N2. We really hope you get an opportunity to go out there, drive that corridor, walk some of the pedestrian trails that are around some of the stormwater facilities, and really take a look at that project. We really believe that it's another outstanding blueprint project, and hope that you believe that as well. We are working with the city and the county to set a date for a celebration, and as soon as we have that nailed down, we will let you know. The photos that you see online are on the board are the extension of the box culvert. This is part of the Capital Cascades Trail Segment 3D project. This is the project that we are doing in conjunction with the city of Tallahassee's FAMU Way. As you can see, the box culverts on the left, this has been completed from approximately Gamble Street to the north side of Stearns. So we're really making progress there. And both of our projects are expected to be completed in later 2018. So once those segments are complete, the connection from Cascades Trail to the St. Mark's Trail will be realized. Also along this project, Blueprint and the City of Tallahassee received an American Planning Association Award of Merit for the project. This was the 2017 year state chapter APA award. And we really believe that it speaks to the level of commitment that these projects are making to the community and setting the bar for those others coming behind them. Magnolia Drive, the multi-use trail, as you can see from the photos, this is what was Phase 6. It's the segment between Monroe Street and Adams. We are doing this in partnership with Big Bend Cares, and it is expected to be completed later this year. Multi-use, recently we've received some input from some citizens regarding the overall design concepts for the multi-use drive multi-use trail. And we are working with City Public Works, Leon County Public Works, and our designers to evaluate that corridor. We have a meeting scheduled in a couple days to really get into the weeds about what the options are. We'll be reaching out to citizens and stakeholders along the corridor, looking at what the opportunities are, and once we get consensus, we'll come back and update you in December and provide any proposed adjustments that may be necessary to the project.
All right, thank you.
So the comprehensive wastewater treatment facilities plan, at the last meeting we advanced that, and Leon County is managing that, but the next step in this is they will be presenting it to the Basin Management Action Plan, which is the BMAP, On-Site Treatment and Disposal Systems Committee at their next meeting, and I believe that is in October. So just wanted to provide you a brief update of where that is and where it's going.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you all working with utilities, with city utilities on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Charles. Thank you, Madam Chair. The second, I'm going to pivot here in a moment to Al Latimer. The OEV team, as you will see in the subsequent brief update, just continues to really lean forward to grow jobs and create that sense of vibrancy and vitality that is the expectation of this august body. A lot to report on, and hopefully we'll hit it quickly at a high level for you. Al?
Okay, thank you. Members, I'm happy to talk about the activities of the Office of the Economic Vitality. We have, like Ben said, we've gotten off to a great start, and I did not want him to have to talk for me. This is a program that has a very talented staff. They work as hard as anybody I've ever seen in my 30 years of economic development, and the results are showing it. So let me just hit the slides. The first thing I want to point out is that 193 jobs have been generated since OEB began operations. We've had 37 face-to-face meetings with local companies to help them identify ways that they could grow and add new jobs. We've sent out 10 newsletters so far this year to our nearly 900 member subscriber base. Next slide. Of the 18 total projects that we've worked this year. We've won 3 of those projects. That's how we got the 193 jobs I referred to a little earlier. Of the 15 active projects that we are currently working, there is one Project Campus that, if it comes to fruition, would add 120 jobs, new jobs to the local economy at a wage of 200% above the local average wage. Next slide. So far this year, we've conducted 8 economic impact analysis, which helps us determine that the economic benefits a project will have on a given area. The chart to your right in the yellow box, you will see that the Washington Square development is anticipated to create just under 1,800 jobs and have a economic output of $206 million. Next slide. Okay. So we work with the Council for Community and Economic Research to produce the second quarter of 2017 cost of living index. The slide shows that Tallahassee, Leon County came in 4.9% below the national average. If you'll look at the graph there, you'll see that the dark circles represent some of the other indices that are presented from the southeast. Next slide. The Office of Economic Office of MWSBE is working with developers to find small business and minority firms to support contracting and employment opportunities that they need to facilitate the completion of their project and moving forward into all phases of permanent positions. The MWSBE office is also has developed new ways to engage, empower, educate, and equip businesses, and that has resulted in a 24% increase in new certifications and a 25% increase in recertifications. Next slide. So in the strategic plan, there's a recommendation for the Economic Vitality Leadership Council to create a magnetic technologies task force to identify businesses that would benefit from a location close to our mag lab, and to help us establish a cluster in magnetic technologies. Next item on this slide I want to draw your attention to is that the state of Florida created a Florida Job Growth Grant Program to support infrastructure projects. There is also a workforce training component, but what we want you to glean from this slide is that OEV is preparing a application, which we will present to the Economic Vitality Leadership Council and then bring before the IA for consideration at the December meeting.
Just let me add to the last slide. We met with, I want the commissioner to know, we met with DEO immediately after the state identified this opportunity to make sure that we were working on concepts that were right in line with what they'd be looking for. We want to thank the Secretary for their assistance in that, and we also a head nod to our EVLC Chair, Steve Evans, who's been great to collaborate upon, as we believe we have one opportunity for our marketplace, working with some of our collaborators, as we'll present back to you after we go to your Leadership Council for ratification at your next meeting. We want to make sure that we maximize this opportunity and bring some of those, $85 million for the entire state of Florida, a little bit limited, but we have a good project that we're working to finalize now. We'll look forward to bringing that back to you.
When is the deadline on those applications?
Those are first come, first served. In our marketplace, Innovation Park, LCRDA, has already submitted 4 applications. We've supported that effort. We've been working very closely with them. We have a project in the final stages of development that we're actually presenting on Friday to the Economic Vitality Leadership Council for their input, following through the process. we will submit that application to get into the queue, and we'll bring it back for ratification. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
just on point, I just wanted to give a shout out to staff. The Innovation Park Board has considered, we had 4 parts to 1 application. It was rather large, and the collaboration between OEV staff and LCRDA staff has been exceptional. And I think we're in a great position with both applications. They really dovetail quite nicely. So thank you very much for all your efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I think just a few more slides, Al.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Following the old adage, if you really want to know what somebody thinks, ask him. OEV has initiated the hashtag for Florida Capital for Business Because campaign to get authentic feedback from businesses on why they choose to stay and grow here in Tallahassee. So here's a video clip of their responses. All right. So if you have not yet gone to hashtag Florida Capital for Business and filled out a why or why Tallahassee, please do that for us. And if you know a business that you could approach and ask them to participate, we ask you to do that as well. So OEV continues to build its reputation as a source for timely and relevant information, and there's no greater example of that than during the recent Hurricane Irma. We pushed out information to help businesses prepare for the storm. We provided them with regular updates during the storm to keep them informed, and then we provided them with information after the storm so that they could find out about information about post-disaster recovery programs that could assist their efforts if they were impacted. Next slide. So, want to bring to your attention, and you have a flyer at your desk. This is the 25th anniversary of the Minority Enterprise Development Week, or Midweek. This year's event we've taken the time to refresh it. We have some new speakers, high-profile speakers lined up, and workshops that offer more relevant topics. Our luncheon speaker is Marie Johns, who is a former United States Department of Commerce administrator. In the column to the right, don't want you to miss this, you'll see a list of events occurring between September and October. Please notice that E-Month, our celebration of national entrepreneurship, is happening November 13th through the 17th. Next slide. Okay. So while I want to be respectful of your time, I certainly don't want to miss an opportunity to talk about something that is very, very meaningful to Tallahassee-Leon County. The right to host the American Competitiveness Exchange Committee was an international competition. It wasn't local, it wasn't regional, it wasn't statewide, it was international. There's a lot of competition for this event. Commissioner Dozier first identified the opportunity. The OEV staff led the host communities and kept them coordinated through the entire bid process, and we won. And now, in only 74 days, we're going to be staging one of the most high-profile events Tallahassee-Leon County has ever seen. There's over 50 high-level professionals from over 30 countries. They're going to come here, and they're going to look at our innovation and entrepreneurial assets. We have, a tour that's going to take them through the Mag Lab, the High Performance Materials Institute, and share with them our public investment in infrastructure, and that's how that's creating a fantastic placemaking tool for us. So stay tuned. for itinerary and tour times. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the IA's patience with, there's so much that's great. We have 4 opportunities a year to sort of walk you through a tremendous program of work, and clearly we're very excited about all that's going on, including that which Charles and Al has spent some time sharing with you, and as we've gone over in some of our briefings. So you've already done consent, so, right. For general business, keep going. All right. So you've got a tremendous toolkit, as you know. It includes state incentives and local incentives. You've challenged us to continuously look to be as stewardly and innovative as we can to create jobs all across our community. Not just targeted jobs, but also create an access to economic opportunity. We've promised you that at every one of these meetings for the foreseeable future, we're going to be bringing back to you program opportunities, program initiatives for your consideration, and to add to the toolkit or the gearbox. This is one such program. It's a pilot program. Al does have a brief presentation, but I'll just say this. With the blessing and leadership of the EVLC, you finally now have a locally based program that can help create jobs in the south side of your community. That is the bottom line for this. We have pilot funding through your investment and leadership through your BRI fund for the next 3 years, and we're very excited about what this can do, not just to create targeted sector jobs, but also to help those who dream in some of the underserved areas of our community capture their own slice of their American dream, from kitchens to any storefront, et cetera. And so, Al, why don't you walk them through some of the key components of this program, please?
Okay. All right. So as Ben said, you asked us to, to develop additional incentive programs so that we remain competitive. And so the Urban Vitality Job Pilot Program is an idea we're bringing forward for your consideration. It is a targeted incentive or targeted reimbursement incentive program to induce businesses to expand operations in the Promise Zone. And so if you will look at the map, those are the boundaries of the Promise Zone. To the north, you have Tharp Street. To the south, you have Ridge Street. This program was, or this boundaries were originally put together to win a federal designation as a Promise Zone, to get a grant to better serve disadvantaged businesses. And so it now provides the boundaries for the creation of the Urban Vitality Job Creation Program. Next slide. So the eligibility criteria is on the slide. I'll just hit a few key points. It's for-profit businesses, small businesses. They must create jobs in one of 11 industry categories, add a minimum of 2 new jobs, and maintain those jobs for 6 months. No company can achieve more than $7,000 reimbursement in a given year. And if you'll look to the right, you will see that there is a what the average wage requirement is. If a company, for example, invests or pays an employee 75% of the county's annual wage, average annual wage, they will receive a reimbursement of $500. And similarly, if you go down to 150% of the wage, it's a reimbursement of $1,500 per job. Again, maximum is $7,000. We're asking that the program be instituted and evaluated over the next 3 years, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments on this?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
Can
Deloge?
you talk to a little bit about reporting? So if we go 3 years, what's the checkpoints? So how do we know we kick this off now? How do we know how we're doing, what we're measuring, and how are we going to measure success?
Sure. We certainly will be reporting, giving you updates at the, at the IA meetings. And, the first thing we need to do is put the program on the street. We don't know what the desire for, or not desire, but the demand for it until it has been put together and on the street. And so we'll keep you abreast of the progress as we go along.
We, just to add to that, anticipate, Madam Chair, if I could, anticipate annual updates for this. Anticipate that we'll be utilizing all of the mechanisms to engage the community that we have in place, not just within the blueprint model, but also gratefully with the city and the county to spread the word as far and wide as we can. Our goal is to go through on this first come, first served program, that 25,000 pilot amount as quickly as possible, and to bring back that good news to this body for your consideration.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
I just want to
Commissioner
commend, talked to Ben about this during our briefing, but I do want to commend being from a district where this is kind of embedded in the district that I represent. I think it's an ingenious and innovative approach for those folks that may have small businesses in that district, as well as larger businesses too. And I think promise zone is a very appropriate word, and I look forward to the opportunities that will be offered to not only my district, but also all over Leon County.
Yes, Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you. Just to follow up on Commissioner Delogio's question, in the tracking and reporting, it will be good to track, the demand and other things, but the length of time people stay employed, that you all are going to do some some follow-up reporting, I should say, and to see how long people remain employed and those types of things as well?
Absolutely. We would consider these applications to be putting people in the loop, as our business retention and expansion program is so-called, right?
Fantastic. Well, just one other quick comment, Madam Chair. I will echo Commissioner Jackson's comments. I really appreciated the discussion in our briefing, and as I said to Christina and Ben, the foundation laid for this program, and Ben anticipated me in the meeting referencing the EZDA, the enterprise that we had. Our community was one of the few, if not the only one, that really had a robust EZDA. We were sorry to see that go with the state legislation. This, we had talked about way back when, rebuilding that locally, and I think this is the start. And I think it tees up perfectly an incentive program for apprenticeships. And I mentioned that in briefing, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Ben and Christina for already kind of anticipating that and knowing where it's going to fall after target industry study and the talent pipeline study and those types of things come in. So I think this is a great start, but it also is a good foundation for those types of future programs. Thanks.
Yes.
I'll move adoption if we haven't.
We have not had a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Motion's made and been seconded. Thank you.
And then to say that I think obviously we want to have as many tools in the toolkit as we can, and I think programs that incent the job creation in certain parts of our community that are economically disadvantaged is a good thing. But as we learned from the tech hire designation that we received from the White House several years ago, they did a survey assessing the skills gap in this community, and at that time, LinkedIn discovered that we had roughly 550 positions in the tech sector that went advertised for anywhere between 10 and 12 months, which points to something you've worked real passionately on around the training of the workforce. And so I look forward to this body taking a turn toward programming that starts to invest in people and talent development in individuals for sectors that are undersupplied with workforce that don't require college degrees, but it does require specialized training that folks may not be able to afford based on where they may be at that particular point in life. But if we were to provide what might be for this body pretty nominal financial incentives to help those folks gain the training that they need, they'll get gainful employment that, quite frankly, will allow them to make better than a livable wage and allow us to cut short some of the advertising period for jobs that, again, already exist in this community and are lacking the kind of skill and the talent to go into those jobs.
Right. Definitely the two go hand in hand. And I do think it's really important to reach out as far as we can to let everyone know about these opportunities, because it's kind of a new arena in a lot of ways. So, Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Mrs. Chair, Ms. Chair. You know, that reminded me that I have had a discussion with some folks from TCC about putting in place some programs there that can meet some of these needs, and that when they do these things, they have partnerships that are arranged with various entities in order to do that. So I was wondering if you were pursuing that as an avenue to try to address these problems at all. Have you?
Madam Chair, yes, absolutely we are, and it's either in this item, I believe it's in the update item for OEV. We've already created a stakeholder group that includes the community college, includes K through 12 and the school board, et cetera. We believe strongly in talent as being a key driver for economic vitality as well. We're trying to ascertain very clearly what our strengths are, and we herald them a bit, and then also what our shortcomings might be, so that when we develop a program, and that is our intent, working with those partners is to develop a program alternative, we can bring that back before you with clear objectives and measurables and guidelines. More than that, I would say we're trying to also align that with the targeted industry study process that's ongoing. We anticipate that will be concluded in December. So the long and the short is, from today through your second meeting in 2018, we are going to continue to work this issue, building back towards a recommendation, a comprehensive recommendation to this body.
Well, that's positive. Going back to what the mayor said, though, we need to make sure this communication, that these studies have been done and these analyses have been presented, is communicated with you. I think that's key. So, because this designation has gotten access to data and analysis that we might not have otherwise had, and I think it could be critical in sooner rather than later moving on addressing some of these needs, because I'm sure if these jobs have been sitting out there unfilled for this, for long periods of time, and in what other field could that apply to also? We need to get on top of that. I mean, here we are, we talk about creating jobs already, and we have jobs that are not filled, and so connecting that information is very important, and so I hope that you all manage to do that effectively in the next day.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I guess I'm sure that Commissioner Jackson will agree with me on this as well as everyone else, but we know that only 40% of our high school graduates go on to post-secondary education. So you've got 60% of those graduates that are out there. And if, as we all know, if we don't provide something for them to do, they will find something to do and end up in Sheriff McNeil's hotel on Municipal Way. But there are mechanisms in place through the school system, and I hope that we're working very closely with the school district because there are industry certification programs in place. There's legislation that requires school districts to do that, and there are monetary incentives for them to do it, to provide those industry certification programs so that when students graduate from high school, they're industry certified and ready to go directly into the workforce, which could address the issue that the mayor is bringing up. If we're working with the school district and they've got those programs in place, sometimes as early as middle school, and they're training those kids all the way through high school graduation to assume those technology jobs and those high-wage, high-skilled jobs that are out there. So if we're working with our school district in the kind of partnership that we should, I don't, and as well as, of course, Lively and TCC on the adult end, I don't see why we should have jobs that are going unfilled for, 12 months or so. And so I hope that we are forming that kind of partnership and asking the school district to address those training needs as well.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask for a vote in a minute, but I just want to say that in working with the Leon Works, the school district has been great. They have now a new full-time person overseeing the middle skills training program, so I think the schools are getting totally engaged again and working with TCC and Lively. with us, with the county, to be sure young people and older people too are getting the training they need to get into this. And I think we are finally, as a community, really gelling in this regard. So feeling good about that.
Madam Chair, one last quick
Yes.
comment on that point.
Sure.
I think what we're seeing, and you highlighted it perfectly, on all fronts, whether it's the chamber, the schools, Tallahassee Builders Association, others, everyone's kind of working in the same direction right now. So this is perfect timing for OEV as kind of the coordinator to do a deeper dive. I think what a lot of us are hearing from the businesses, though, they've gotten out of the apprenticeship model. That went away, particularly in construction and other fields, mechanical, engineering, other things like that, 20, 30 years ago. So the incentive program that they may work on in the future, to me, helps businesses recreate those apprenticeship programs and draw from Lively, draw from TCC. That's going to be the critical missing link from a lot of the activities that we're seeing right now. So I think we're going to, in the next year plus, play a really critical role in helping connect those programs, like at the schools and others, with the businesses who need to rebuild this and come to understand what apprenticeships look like and how to incorporate that into their business model. So I'm really excited. A lot of work has been made, or already happened.
Right. It's a great conversation. For now, I'd like to go ahead and take a vote on the other piece of it, which is the Urban Vitality Job Creation Pilot Project, which will start January 1 if we approve it today.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I do not have any speakers cards. If it's proper, I would like to remind anyone in the audience on this or any other items, you have speaker cards in the back, but potentially call for speakers before the...
Thank you. All right, and seeing none, all in favor of the motion that has been made by the mayor and seconded by Commissioner Deloge, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Okay, with that, we will pause here to go into our public hearing. You want to take it away?
I have a script prepared, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right.
Chairman, Chairman, Commissioners, we are at that section of the agenda, and I see the clock has struck the appropriate time, where we are to consider the operating and capital improvements budget at a public hearing. I'll be making a brief presentation. I'll come on the screen here momentarily. Then we're required to take public comments, thereafter close the public testimony portion of the hearing, and engage in board discussion. While that's coming up, I will just share the first of two public hearings did occur, and this sort of speaks to the layers of accountability and the focus of our body on engaging the citizens in full transparency. I do note that your first of your two public hearings was conducted, as Mr. Stucks indicated, at the Citizens Advisory Committee. Next slide, please. So we're starting off on item number 13, which is your operating budget. I would also like to add, also in the guise of transparency, that this information was actually printed, not just the notice, but the information itself on your budget was printed in the Democrat. So overall, when you look at all of Blueprint, including OEV and the traditional Blueprint programs, you have a budget increase of 3.4%. You see that on the screen. Significantly, Commissioners, two things I think largely comprise this. Staffing levels were held constant with one exception. The city's audit did call for the creation of one new FTE, a senior accountant, so we're including that here. In addition to that, we did incorporate into this budget plan the same merit or cost of living adjustment increases that your city commission and county commissions respectively have done or are in the process of doing. We will act once you act. We will follow your lead in terms of what we do with our staff. On the Blueprint infrastructure, all right, I covered that. Office of Economic Vitalities, they've kept their operating expenses flat. There is an overall budget increase of 8.8%. Commissioners, this is attributed largely to actually onboarding of staff. As you know, fiscal year 17, we were getting completely up to full speed in terms of staffing levels. This just makes that whole and for the 2018 cycle. Next slide. This is what was actually laid out. It's also in a resolution as attached in your materials. This was included in the paper, and that, I believe, concludes my comments. You see the recommendation. At this juncture, Madam Chairman, I think it's proper to call for public speakers before turning it back to you and your colleagues.
And do we have any public speakers on this?
I have no public speaker cards.
Move adoption.
Second.
Staff's recommendation moved and seconded. Any comments? All in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying yes
Hey,
or aye. Thank you. Opposed, no. I like a guy who follows orders here. Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you.
uh-oh.
Thank you very much. Okay, on to the capital budget. Again, very straightforward document. Next slide, please. Again, remind and thank the Citizens Advisory Committee for holding the first public hearing on this. It's your second and final public hearing. I would like to highlight for you, you see the blue line and the split. What this really portends, all these projects, of course, are those that you have acted and given direction upon previously. But I would like to highlight the percentage that were, yes, closing out the Blueprint 2000 projects, but you also see forward movement and motion per your guidance on the Blueprint 2020 projects, specifically the three listed there. Next slide. The capital improvement plan itself, this is sort of the bottom line. In addition to the net sales tax allocation plan, know that in 2018, fiscal year 2018, we program and estimate that $26.5 million of your investment will be put towards projects within our community. $120 million is programmed over the next 5 years. Both important, I think, figures. Next. You see the recommended action. Madam Chair, turn it back to you for, I have no speaker cards, but for public testimony.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve. Commissioner Proctor? No texting in
This
the,
is, Commissioner Lights are giving me an earful.
Put her on the speaker so we can hear it.
Commissioner Lights, they want you on speaker, but I'm not going to do it. I ain't gonna do you like that. I gotta talk,
Okay.
Commissioner. It's my time to say
Commissioner
something. I'm
Lightsey?
coming back to you. All right, bye-bye. All right, this is, which one we on?
Capital budgets.
we're on the budget.
That's
Number
the-
14.
on the right one.
Roman numeral 5, number 14.
All right, where were we with the prioritization thing?
Beg your pardon?
Okay. All right, what does this include, number 14? Okay, I hadn't looked at that part right there. What's in that, Ben?
We're moving forward on projects. It's included on page, starting on page 2 of 5, but it includes projects that have already been prioritized and you've already given, the I has already given direction. We continue with funding for those priorities.
Okay, now, Commissioners, what I'm trying to talk about is the Spring Hill Road part, and that is from Capitol Circle down there by the airport to Orange Avenue.
And we will be getting to that in another item as soon as we finish this. And
Okay, does this
Look
include?
forward to your-
Is this in that?
No,
Okay, very
this
good.
is really about the ongoing Blueprint projects right now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We'll be getting to that as soon as we get through this.
Okay, good.
All right, are there other comments? Motion's been made and seconded on item 14. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Motion carries. All right, we are back to item number 3 of general business. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Making good progress, Commissioners. 2 items left. We're back in general business. As we pull that back up, the next item is item number 11. Commissioners, I just want to pause here a moment and say, so there's 27 projects within Blueprint 2020. Really under your leadership, working over the course of the last few meetings, you've been able to provide significant leadership over initial prioritization of 17 of those. Today, a brief presentation is prepared for you for the last 10. These are the smaller projects. Look forward to presenting the work that we've been done. You may recall at your last meeting, you provided us very clear guidance on what filters you would like for us to process these towards a ranking for your consideration. That's here for you today. Autumn Calder, if you could walk us through that action. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present a prioritization of the Blueprint infrastructure projects. This is our third presentation on prioritization and represents the culmination of 3 years of work that the IA has undertaken. Should the IA take action today on the proposed list of community enhancement, connectivity, and quality of life projects, we'll complete the prioritization process 2 years prior to the receipt of the sales tax funds, giving us the time to prepare and present to the IA an implementation plan for the 2020 program. Over the last 3 years, the IA has done a lot of work to prioritize and move forward all of these critical infrastructure projects. By the end of 2016, only 16 of the original 27 had yet to be acted upon. In the beginning of 2017, the 5 remaining large transportation projects were aligned with the CRTPA's Regional Mobility Plan, sending a clear and consistent message to FDOT on our local priorities, maximizing our leveraging opportunities. In June, the IA Board initiated the first phase of the Alternative Sewer Solutions Study. When combined with the prior year's actions, this leaves 10 community enhancement, connectivity, and quality of life projects to prioritize, and those are the ones that we're talking about today. Here are the 10 projects listed alphabetically. The cost estimates range from $1.5 million to $22 million. To define the projects for evaluation against the prioritization criteria, the project descriptions found on leonpenny.org were used as the basis. leonpenny.org contains a 2-page project description for each of the projects funded by our penny sales tax and was the information hub provided to the voters leading up to the 2014 referendum to extend that penny sales tax. The project descriptions are also included in the Blueprint Interlocal Agreement. Therefore, they served as the basis for our prioritization.
Which ones were added on after the fact? Which of these are late projects?
All the 27 infrastructure projects were approved by the IA Board in 2014. To develop a prioritization of the remaining 10 CCQ projects, community enhancement, quality of life, and connectivity, the shown set of criteria was approved by the IA Board last June. The criteria is based on the 2014 ballot language, which was presented to the voters when given the option to extend the sales tax. One additional criteria was added, project readiness, to capture any existing momentum that a project may already have moving into 2020. Each criterion was given an equal weight of 20, which adds up to a perfect score of 100. The CCQ projects are evaluated against the 5 criteria, scored and placed in rank order on this slide. And here they are with our top projects tied with a score of 80 points. Also, please note we had one other tie, so rather than seeing 10, you see 8. And we'll come back to this list at the end of the presentation. Here are the 10 ranked CCQ projects presented on a map of the local area. Also shown is the remaining Blueprint 2000 project, Capital Cascades Trail Segment 4, and the 2020 projects that have already been initiated by the IA. All of the Blueprint infrastructure projects are critical infrastructure projects. There are 3 key components to the Blueprint program: process, transparency, and flexibility. Maintained throughout the 20 years is the IA's ability to advance a project forward regardless of its place in the list on the subsequent slide. This could be due to a critical safety need or the opportunity to capture a partnership that could help to stretch our local sales tax dollars. Should the IA approve the prioritized list today, staff will take this to the next level, which is the development of a 5 to 10-year implementation plan for these projects. Plus, we'll add the others that have already been initiated by the IA. We anticipate being able to present options to the IA Board at the first meeting in 2018. The implementation plan will provide options for being able to move forward these smaller scale CCQ projects with our larger regional transportation projects. Today, we're asking the IA Board to approve the results of the prioritization as presented and direct staff to develop the 5 to 10-year implementation plan.
Move the item, Madam Chair.
Second.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, we do have 3 speakers on item 11. If you're ready, the first is Mary Catherine Lawler. If you'll come to the podium, please, and state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Mary Catherine Lawler. I'm at 2814 Remington Green Circle, Tallahassee, Florida. That's actually my business address. And I live off Timberlane Road for my private residence. I spoke to you all a few months ago at your last Blueprint meeting, and I spoke on behalf of the Market Street project. I'm very excited to see that the criteria that you all supported has tied the Market Street project for #1 to wonderful projects, both of them. And I'm here on behalf of the entire Market Street community. I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people. In the interest of your time, we have a few other speakers coming up that will speak to specific parts of the Market Street community. However, we did try to control that because I know you've received a lot of emails. And we do want to thank you, and we appreciate your vote and supporting the Blueprint staff for all the hard work that they did. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scott Hampton? No? Well, are you Mark? Okay.
Hi, I'm Scott Hampton, 2787 Palafox Lane. I thank you, Commissioners, Mayor, for listening to us and dreaming up this wonderful project. Whoever did it, it's brilliant. It really is. I'm a resident of the area. My wife's over there. We walk every other day. We have to drive north of this area to the McClay Gardens or the Overstreet Parks to walk, but all those areas charge a fee. Here we have a beautiful park right here in the center of this enormous amount of residential area that can be open access to those residents. And one of the criteria I just read about the transportation flow, if you have been on the road there, McClay Boulevard, from Nick's Toggery to Premier, before school, after school, or after work, you will see people going from 0 to 50 in that short distance. This roundabout will slow people down. It's just going to be a wonderful, tremendous improvement to the community. And as a grandparent with young children, I can't tell you how important safety is. And then right here we've got Gilchrist Elementary. They have a safe access road right to that park area that's being proposed. It's just, I can see field trips coming. It's just a wonderful, wonderful project. I thank you so much for considering it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Mark Cross.
Yes, hello, I'm Mark Cross, and I'm here, I'm from Tasty Pastry Bakery. One of the owners of Tasty Pastry, and we've been a fixture in Market District for the past 40 years or so. I'm here representing the Market District Merchants Association, and all of the merchants are very excited about this project that's going on. It's going to add a lot of vitalization to the area. It will give and create a sort of a sense of destination with the park there. It gives a parking area, the connection, as Scott mentioned, to the recreational avenues there by foot, lots more of hiking trails. So the merchants view it as a plus in many different areas. It attracts people from even off the interstate. I've noticed increased pedestrian traffic on the Market Street, Market District corridor in their buses with sports teams from high schools from out of our area stop there, and they unload their kids, and the kids go to all of the different restaurants and areas and shopping areas and that. So this project would be just a boon to that and greatly improve it and enhance it. So we really appreciate your moving forward with it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time.
We have one more speaker, Bill Wilson. Pretty sure I saw. There you are.
Thank you. Bill Wilson, 1816 Old Fort Drive. I wanted to speak to you about the Orange Avenue placemaking piece, and we also are happy to be in that #1 slot. And as I think we mentioned before, the biggest challenge in Orange Avenue and the redevelopment of both the Orange Avenue apartment complex, which we're actively working on the corridor study for that, but the other development in the area is the floodplain. And what's in this project is the enhancement to a park-like facility of the holding pond on the south side of Orange Avenue. But there's no enhancement to the pond itself. And would encourage you all to put on your different hats as city commissioner, county commissioner, or CRA member to look at how we might, as part of this, actually enhance that pond and take some of that additional drainage from that east-west ditch, which is now flowing over toward Rickards High School, and divert it south and really help us with the floodplain issue along Orange Avenue. Right now, that pond's in the city. It's owned by the county. Most of that, a good chunk of that area is in the CRA, and an infrastructure project there that would relieve that drainage problem and create economic development on a whole lot of vacant land in South City could have a true impact. The other thing I would suggest to you is, given current interest rates, given the price of inflation on construction items, and from reading the FSU study on the economic impact, there may be some ways to put some forward funding structures together to do some of these projects sooner. I think if you look at the benefits of those three items coming together, you might find that some of these have some real benefit. I'm not suggesting a 30-year bond issue that's going to double the cost, but there may be some other financing structures that will allow the forward funding of this. And if you look at some of these projects that are way down on the bottom of the list and are really needed, pushing those out 10, 12, 15 years is not really desirable. So if we can find some way to do it sooner, that would be better. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this subject? Commissioner Deloge.
Just on point with the last speaker, if it's okay, if we entertain comments.
Absolutely.
I think he makes a good point. I think I talked to staff earlier today. You know, we've got this long list of projects. We don't start collecting money till 2020. Most people that voted for this think that the day they vote for it, that the spigot turns on and things start to happen. So to the degree that we can, and I know we're doing some of this, but to the degree that we can figure out a way, and I'm not advocating that we borrow money, but advance fund either from the city, from the county, from the current blueprint funds, and do some of the, you know, my fear is we get to 2020 and then there's a 2 or 3 year lag because there's planning and evaluations and, you know, all the PD&E work that doesn't actually offer, is that my 3 minutes? Am I done? I knew that would happen.
Thanks so.
But the concern, I think if the citizens of the community saw activity, it would go a long way. You know, and I'm not picking any specific projects. I'm just saying if we could look and see, is there low-hanging fruit to do some of the pre-work without spending an immense amount of money and then work through that. And people smarter than me can figure out whether we borrow from ourselves, whether we bond it. I wouldn't really be a big fan of bonding, but I think we've got funds in reserves that for some of the smaller things we can work through.
Comment to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to give credit to this body for actually having already picked off some of the low-hanging fruit of the 27 projects as we discussed in the budget, the capital budget just a few moments ago. You already are on some of these projects moving them forward. We're prepared with the motion actually that's on the board here today and over the course of the next 5 months, preparing for on the 6th month coming back before this group, but to look at this. Once you have completed these last 10 projects, you will have effectively acted to prioritize all 27. We then will pivot towards creating a 5 to 10 year work plan, a draft that we can present back to you that should do precisely what you're talking about, sir.
And then just to add to that, I mean, this is methodical, it's strategic, it's well thought out. I would assume that the process as we go forward in the next 5 to 10 years, we may tweak it a little bit and say, you know what, we really think we need to weight economic development more, or we need to, so as we go forward, we'll review that. But thank you, nice job, appreciate it.
Right. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really appreciate the work. I think the comments or the discussion we had in February and June did help expand the criteria and look at things, and I really appreciate all the efforts you all have put in. I will say that looking at the ranking, it was interesting to me that the alternative sewer study, something that we found so valuable that we funded it at the last meeting, was ranked 10th out of 11. And I just wanted to note that because there are a couple of the projects that have a countywide impact and are very different than the other placemaking projects. There's a few of the others, and I still have concerns that I'll say the animal shelter and this study we may need to look at again in the future. And with that, I would love it if the animal shelter was listed as a countywide impact instead of a Southeast project. I don't know if anyone else has that same feeling, but I think that is something, we only have one, And that, I mean, just to indicate that to the community, I just wondered if that could be a friendly amendment, if staff has no objection to that, because that is a value to the entire community.
I would second that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think it did fall out in a very good way, and Autumn, I appreciated your focus on the flexibility. I like your three terms there, the process, transparency, and flexibility, because one of the things I've heard in some of the emails and comments on a variety of projects is exactly what I think Commissioner Deloge was just saying, that everyone thinks this is going to be set in stone and we're going to get all these projects immediately. And we know that a lot of these things may shift based on other work we're doing and things like that. And I think it's good that we're being very clear and upfront about that. The only other two questions I had, Madam Chair, were one, going to Bill Wilson's comment. I think you'd brought this up in the past about the stormwater around Orange Avenue, and I think we may have mentioned this in the last meeting, but when that comes back, either at our joint housing meeting or with the CRTPA study or in Blueprint, looking at that stormwater component, I'd love to hear some more information about that. I know we had done improvements years ago in that area that improved the flooding substantially, but I think we're all interested in the Orange Avenue redevelopment and just digging into that stormwater issue a little bit more. I've heard that from the development side and others as well. And the last thing, she didn't speak, but Louise Devine is here with Red Hills Farm Alliance, and a lot of people have referenced the farmers market at Market Street and the fact that that location may go away sometime soon. So given that Market District may not come about, even though it's ranked second for a few years, I'm just wondering.
Let's be honest. Okay.
I'm sorry? It's tied for first. Okay, thank you. It's tied for first. That I'm just wondering if there's anything, I mean, I don't know another body to bring this up in right now, but I think the desire for farmers markets around the community is something that we've all had interest in, whether it's CRA, our respective commissions, or other things like that. So I'm just wondering if there's any work being done on a different location in Market District, or as a temporary location or anything like that, or if that's something that we could discuss in the future that is part of the economic development, connecting with the OEV for our surrounding farmers, our small farmers and others. So just wondering, Ben, what your thoughts on that might be, or if we could bring that back up at some point as a status update at least.
Points well received, well taken. I know that a couple of thoughts, going through the planning, so different hat of mine, but going through the planning process for where the current farmers market is today, there's been some consideration that occurs as part of that evaluation. I also understand as Blueprint begins now and engages in work in refining this particular project, that those kinds of concepts have been brought up in the past, and we would anticipate and welcome that healthy discussion as we move forward.
Okay.
All right, I wonder if that might be an agenda item or at least a topic at a future meeting, because, I mean, this,
For those Katie runs that one, right? Yeah, I could get you in touch with you.
because there's some urgency, I think, I would assume, in that piece of
And
it.
it may be something that the businesses in the area, that the property owners may be able to address in other ways, but it does keep coming up in a lot of the comments, and it does seem like there will be a gap, likely. I know this is going through city development, but if there is that gap, if there's a role we can play in helping establish a temporary place for the farmers market, I think that would be great.
And to that, I think Commissioner Miller had a comment on,
Several of these pieces of
pardon me?
comments. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I wanted to say, and I'm going to come back to the farmers market in a minute, but let me say that many of these projects several of them are going to have immediate payback. We're going to talk about one of those when we get to the Gateway District, the Airport Gateway District. One which is going to mean that advanced funding or starting early or whatever, the sooner those get done, the sooner they will begin to show returns to the point where the long term, over the 20 years of the tax, the long term gain from starting with those in the beginning is going to exceed the cost. That's what, and I'm going to be interested in hearing that kind of information from you when you come back on advanced funding. I mean, we've seen what happened with Gateway or with Gain Street. We've put in $30 million, $200 million in return, private investment. And so that is all going to be part of that consideration for getting moving on some of these things. I feel that way about the Gateway project, but I also feel that way about the Market District. That's brought it to my attention, a couple things that I've been saying to my own commission. You know, we have these things. 2011 was the that's just the particular Market District one. This is the one I just grabbed when I was walking out the door because I knew we were going to be talking about it. 2011, and this is 2017. Two things about this. 6 years, number one, and great ideas take forever to get done. That's government time. But number two, you guys don't get these at the county. And I mean, we need to share. We need to, when we do, this is the planning department's work. And it's the city's generated it, but the fact is that when we produce products like this out of our planning department, you guys need to have those presentations just like we do. So then you'll have the same information, and that'll really clear up a lot. And then we focus down into the farmers market. I'd like to refer all of you, I know that several of you may not know what the city's doing out there. And I wanted to send you to a website called TallahasseeMarketDistrict.com, which is a great website that's been set up to help inform the public on what is being done right now and what's going to happen in the future. We are well aware of the concern that people have that farmers market, which is a part of a lot of people's Saturday morning routine, might be hindered, and that's something that's gone into the discussions of this particular project and what is happening right now. But it's included, you know, discussions with Premier, and there's been a lot of talk about it. It's something that's very definitely on the radar of the city folks that are at least working the district. And then also I wanted to share that, but I also finally wanted to share that already, just because of the beginnings of work over on the ponds and the hope that this will ultimately come to fruition, property values have begun to be affected in the Market District. So already it's having a positive economic impact, well, a negative if you're looking to buy a piece of land, but already it's having a positive impact, and the closeness to the interstate, the ability to bring people off, and actually the path is not really going to be from Gilchrist to the park on field trips. The path is going to be from Gilchrist to Lofty Pursuits, where all the kids go in the afternoon, or to Petite Players, or to dance. I mean, already right in that area, there are so many, it's just rich with all sorts of local businesses. And we have a tremendous amount of potential, which is why I was very glad myself to see this was ranked early. So as the second round begins, there have been a bunch of public meetings already related to the project the city's embarked on. And that's given us great feedback from the neighborhood and from the business community and so on. And absolutely, the farmers market is top on the list of concerns that have been raised. But now we'll start with, when we move from that project into the Blueprint 2020 project, just to assure the public, that's going to initiate an entire new round of public involvement. Is that me? Is that the end of my 3 minutes, which I'm sure I'm reaching? Anyway, that's going to initiate a new round of public involvement on not only this project, but on the other projects as well. So I wanted to assure the public that that's the procedure that Blueprint follows. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Number of comments and great support for the market project. Consistent with what Mr. Wilson suggested, maybe for fast funding some of these projects. which I would support, is a project there on the south end, the fairground. Last week, Thursday before the storm, I went to the fairground, and FEMA medical team was set up there. They had a lot of stuff out there. They were all set to go. Beds were being taken off the trucks, everything. So Sunday night, was looking for FEMA, and they disappeared. They went ghost. So I found them over there at Bragg Stadium, and they rearranged headquarters to the Lawson building. My request is, why y'all left the fairground? And they said that we didn't believe that our operations could survive a level 3 storm. I say that to say that as we think of infrastructural needs, where do you go in a storm? Even FEMA fled the fairground, though they had set up there, unloaded a lot of stuff there. A lot of ambulances from all across the country was there, but the facility proved insufficient to the demand. It proved insufficient to the need. And I think that as we think of the priorities of, and I'm not sure what all of these 0-point numbers mean. I don't know what all that means. But if the Federal Emergency Management Agency does not believe in the quality of facilities that they started, that they came to, that they initially set up, and they fled from, it speaks to a need that we should address infrastructure at the fairground sooner than later. The absence of places to go, the absence of places that have storm capacity and for people to go to an evacuation, emergency situation is really at alarming. It's in an alarming way that it's after the fact that we're trying to designate some facility. So I did get some emails, as I'm sure everybody did, but one gentleman speaking about the Market Street project said that he opposed the project because it invades Bob and Trace. So I'm not sure if invading Bob and Trace is going to cost some extra money or anything like that, or are we sensitive to not invading existing neighborhoods with the market thingy. And he has his name on this piece of paper to me, and you may have it as well. And I was sensitive to that neighborhood if that was an objection that they had. But overwhelmingly, there were more people who tended to support the Market Street. But I'm just saying that for this set of projects, that fairground project is very much needed for us to add infrastructure that can stand the test of community need.
Right. Now, I think Ms. Calder also was speaking about that in our briefing, that there will be a couple of public hearings at least on the Market Street program, and we are kind of in early days to some extent, so there will be a lot of conversation on how that might be. Commissioner
Chair,
Miller just was
I just
first
wanted
up.
to say that in the past, I mentioned that the city had gone out and done public meetings already on the piece that's being done right now, and in response to the concerns of people in Bob and Trace, there was originally a parking area planned for that, for near there, and in response to their concerns, that parking area was removed entirely, and all the trees that were going to come down to make place for that are still there as a buffer. And they literally moved the parking area altogether to a different part of the project. So yes, definitely people are being heard, and they will have yet another chance to be heard as the project keeps going forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Richardson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess what I want to bring attention to is this sort of is a carryover from our earlier CRTPA meeting where we discussed a number of projects on the south side of town that address infrastructure, I think, that's going to lend itself to redevelopment and revitalization on the south side of Tallahassee, as well as economic development. The widening of Orange Avenue, the streetscape project for South Monroe, the widening of Woodville Highway, and the placemaking project at Orange and Meridian, and many of the other projects that are scheduled. And I think that if we're going to talk about advanced funding or fast forwarding projects, we owe it to the citizens of the south side of Tallahassee to do that. That's where I live and have lived for the last 25 years. And I can tell you, we do live in an all-America city, but there are people in this community that don't feel like where they live is a part of that all-America city. When you look at the lack of infrastructure in so many instances, the lack of development and revitalization, vitalization even in some instances, that we begin to look at that. I think there's a synergy that's being built when you look at the Gateway project in the Southwest, what's happening in the Southeast, particularly with the new VA clinic and the standalone emergency room that Capital Regional is proposing. There is a synergy being built. The redevelopment, the Orange Avenue corridor study that the Housing Authority is doing and looking at redeveloping the Orange Avenue apartments. So there is lots of synergy, I think, that's being built on the south side of Tallahassee. We don't know yet what FAMU is planning to do because they haven't given us their master plan yet. I'm sure, hopefully it will be exciting and will add to that synergy as well. But we certainly need to look at those projects that will begin to show the citizens of the south side of town who have paid the property taxes, who have paid the sales taxes for Blueprint, that we are in fact interested in revitalizing that part of our community and making it be a part of this all-America city that we call Tallahassee and part of our capital county.
Thank you. Commissioner Nick Maddox.
Yeah, very briefly, Madam Chair. Just as we talk about fast tracking and looking at different opportunities to move some of our projects forward a little bit, wanted to be reminded myself from my own information of the conversation we had before at the very beginning of this process. We talked about situations where we would consider, if any, bonding or advanced funding projects. Ben, can someone from staff speak to that? I mean, did we put criteria together for that, or am I just?
Yeah, now I'm going off memory. The direction, and this was right before I think I started here, was to not consider bonding at this point in time. It was a pretty, I'm going to paraphrase, but
right.
It was a pretty high hurdle. The way I and staff is interpreting this direction is not necessarily in advanced funding. It is now taking these prioritized 27 projects that you've now given us final prioritization upon, and preparing an action plan to hit the ground running when the funds do come online in 2020, which is coming upon us quick. Now, where we can advance fund, you've been doing that. And our budget discussion earlier sort of laid that out pretty clearly. But at this point in time, we will look at how we can cogently do that over 5 to 10 years. I do not anticipate, as part of this action, an analysis on advanced bonding.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. My question comes from just some of the comments made amongst us as commissioners. Just wanted to clarify whether we were talking about really starting to jump into projects, or we're just talking about getting ready for those projects, so when the time comes, that money comes in, they're ready for ground to be broken on them. So that provides some clarity to me as to what staff, what kind of direction staff is getting from the item that we have here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Commissioner
Madam
Parker.
Chair, stated in a different way, not just advanced funding and a criteria, but looking at the regional effort, say like the Southwest project Florida State is bringing to our awareness. It would just simply make sense that if Florida State is moving tractors and whatnot in that area, and we're rerouting utility lines, and we're burying some and creating this. While we got the ground all broke up, we ought to look at pairing projects and creating the syntheses of work that where there's intersection needs at Spring Hill Road and Orange Avenue and Lake Bradford Road, that we really ought to look at doing projects that overlap, interface Orange Avenue right there, as opposed to doing a project, waiting 4 years, move some more lines, start all over from scratch, try to make the fit when we could have fitted it all at the beginning point. I think that if there is a formula which we all consider, it is in particular in that Southwest with all the projects in overlapping pieces, that we're moving utility lines and we're making intersections framed out correctly. We need to balance that work, and I would suggest with the board's support and approval that we do as much work as we can to synthesize the need for the utility things to be congruent with the projects, and I think that we should lap them together, in particular over in that Southwest area. They've got new roads and new stuff coming, and we ought to just pair it and make it the same size and the same. You know, once you start building a house and you run out of bricks, you may not get that same exact color. You may not get the same. It's hard to run out and 3 years later and do something new because it never really fits the same.
All right. I know that we didn't get the Florida State presentation today, which I think really at some point we will find there is an awful lot of cohesiveness and overlapping and a lot of good work that's being done, so we aren't digging a hole once and then digging it again twice later on. Thank you. So we look forward to working with a lot of partners. All right, if there are no more comments, we have a motion on the floor as amended to designate the Animal Services Center as a county-wide project.
Madam Chair.
As opposed to one to some.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I made the motion as a issue of parliamentary procedure. I would accept Commissioner Dozier's friendly amendment to that motion.
Thank you. I thought that you had, but my apologies.
Are we voting now on the 11 projects or the entirety of?
We're voting on the prioritization process and instructing the staff to move forward with, you know,
All right, do we get another comment round on these projects? Are we still within the same item is my question.
we're still within this item, yes. We
Once
still
this
have-
vote is
We still have
taken.
another item on the airport gateway project too,
okay,
which I think
all right.
is one you're interested in particularly. All right, without further discussion, all in favor of the motion as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. So it brings us to the last item under general business, and I'm going to start off with a head nod. Go forward one more. This is your staff report on the Airport Gateway District concept. I want to start my comments with this visual. As you may remember, 6 months ago, we had Kevin Graham, who's here, and I see a number of officials from Florida State University. They presented you with a high-level overview of all of the various, of all of the various activity that's happening, not just along the airport gateway, which is a Blueprint 2020 project, but on their central campus, moving down towards the golf course, the reservation, really what's been called the Southwest Area Campus in the past. And it was a very encouraging and enlightening presentation. At that time, the IA directed staff, us, Blueprint staff, very clearly to pause, take a look at what was presented, work with FSU and other partners, and really kind of beta test, if you will, the Blueprint 2020 project that is our airport gateway. You directed us to go out, conduct that analysis, and then bring back a plan to see if there was some commonality. And I've got a brief presentation on that that I want to cover. We can go definitely into the weeds later on the various segments. Next slide. But I wanted to start with what your project is, and I want to take a minute to just sort of pause and say grace over this. So this is the project currently that you have. This is one of the 27 Blueprint 2020 projects. This is your airport gateway project as it stands today. And as we'll discuss later, there is a thorough process to make any changes to it. We'll talk about that in a bit. But this is your urban gateway into Tallahassee. This is what was developed during the development phase. It was what was put forth to the voters. And there you see some of the key components of it. Really, it's one linear starting generally at Gaines Street and Lake Bradford Road there by the stadium. Includes some roundabouts on the northern component down through Spring Hill Road. I want to be very clear with everyone in the audience and the IA as well in terms of what it included and what it did not include. It did include right-of-way for Spring Hill Road. It did not include construction of 4 lanes. That was to be determined, as was clearly laid out both in the ordinance, the ballot language, if you will, as well as what was put on leonpenny.org and all the various materials before the voters voted. So long and the short, there's an acknowledgement that we will continue to analyze with CRTPA, the state, and other partners when we meet those traffic counts for that segment. There was funding here for right-of-way. There was not necessarily an affirmative commitment at this point in time, anyhow, for construction. Just a commitment to consider it. Next slide, please.
See,
Okay.
right there, Madam Chair, I want to put a pin in that right there because I disagree with Ben. And indeed, the voters did go to the polls with the thought that that road was going to be 4-lane. And I pulled a document today from 2014 that does indicate that a probability toward its expansion is there. So I found the verbiage that supports and which clearly is distinguished from your comments, Ben.
Understood, sir. And I'll land my comments here pretty quickly, Commissioners. I know there's a lot of good discussion forthcoming. In a nutshell, we wanted to just boil down the course of the last 6 months of work and what we've really, what we've identified working in partnership with, and I want to be very clear about this, involving city public works, county public works, city engineering, county engineering, and engineers, working with the Real Estate Foundation and other representatives, the planning staff at both internally and at Florida State University, CRTPA, and others. This district concept is what has emerged. What does the district actually do? Really, it's highlighted on this slide. And you can see it there. I'll just highlight a couple, I think, that are more salient. It doubles the improvements to roadways across southwest area of our community, using about $900,000 less estimated blueprint dollars. It leverages $21 million from external parties, specifically FDOT and FSU, both in terms of cash and in terms of right-of-way. It does include all segments of the gateway. When it comes to segment G, which is Spring Hill Road, what it does not do, and I'll say 2 things. What I was planning to say was what it does not do is it does not purchase right-of-way. Accordingly, in deference to the Commissioner, it would not therefore include 4-laning of that segment at this point in time either.
Madam Chair, quick question on point. Could you say what the right-of-way estimated costs were?
They're in your booklet and specific attachment. I want to say 11 million. It's, I have it here.
12.
Are you talking about Spring Hill Road?
Right, in its singular fashion, not the
For that segment alone?
right before this concept.
Yeah, I'm going to go with
what was-
$11 million.
I know that's what it is now. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
Megan has.
Do you have the specific dollar amount, Megan?
10.6.
Yeah, originally it was 10.8 million for right-of-way.
Obviously, I think the economic potential for having more roadways across the district is self-evident. I do believe that there is an addressing in this opportunity, and again, This is a gateway district concept that is being put before you. I'll talk a little bit more about that now. But this is really, if you were to boil it down, these are the key takeaways from going away from the gateway project to the gateway district itself. Next slide, please. I want to be very clear about this point here today. We will build towards a staff recommendation, which I'll cover in a moment. But please do understand, all of this has to go forward in a two-prong approach, significant public engagement. One is any change that you make to a blueprint project, any blueprint project of the 27, in accordance with the ordinance, must go through all of your Citizens Advisory Committee, public engagement, and it must be approved only at 2 subsequent public hearings of this body. So do know that. The second thing I want to highlight is you just authorized us, working in partnership with CRTPA, to engage a 12 to 15-month process, an elaborate process that really is going to do a deep dive in the entire Southwest area. It's called the Southwest Area Transportation Plan. It kicks off next month. And what this plan is going to do is objectively look at the transportation needs, the traffic counts that exist for any project, including this project. What thresholds have been tripped? What are the needs long-term to meet the transportation needs within this segment of our community? And please do have the confidence that staff's recommendation or any action that you would take on any of these roadways would be involved in this, and we want to give a head nod to our partners at CRTPA. I think I have one more slide. So these are the recommended actions. Again, commissioners, I am pleased to go through any of the segments, show you a cross-section of what will show you a photo of what you have today, a cross-section of what that looks like, and the cross-sections of what the proposal would be for the district. At this point in time, staff is recommending that you accept this report with our appreciation again to the partners that helped create it. And direct us to proceed, as we've indicated, with moving this concept through the proper processes towards further action in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'd like to say that I'm not supporting this today. Can't support it. The voters have been lied to. We've been duped. There is no way, and I called Commissioner Mark Musian today to say, Mark, you're the progenitor of the thought of this Southwest stuff. And Mark clearly had an idea about where concrete should be laid in this area. I called Debbie Lightsey today to find out her thoughts, her thinking, and what were her reflections with regard to this being a four-way street from the giddy up. And Debbie's concerns tended more toward environmental during those initial blushes of being introduced to this. But Musian clearly said that this, to his recollection, was a roadway that contemplated being 4-lane. It would have bicycle path and walking stuff and everything that someone like Bob Ratcliffe sitting at this table would insist on a bicycle path. So on their memories and on Musian's memory, because it was his original thought about this area, that he too, like myself, always thought that this would be a 4-lane situation. How can you have a gateway to the airport that waits to be a gateway a mile down the street from the airport? How do you begin the 4-lane when it's right there by the airport and you got to go way down the street to get to Orange Avenue before you really get to your gateway? That was not the thoughts. So I am saying to this body that we're going to need to go outside of the budget if that's what we got to do. How can we be an international airport and don't have not one 4-lane street coming from our downtown area? And you recall that it was a discussion some years ago when some bright commissioners wanted to put speed humps on Lake Bradford Road. The legislature threatened to cut off our funding for this community if we were that dumb. Today I was looking at and they're trying to rush people to the airports in Puerto Rico. And everywhere you go in the world, where in the world except Tallahassee is there an international airport, or maybe in Panama City, that you find an international airport and there's not a 4-lane road to get to it. So we are not visioning broadly enough if we're not going to encompass a 4-lane visioning for the Spring Hill Road. Secondly, when this project was put on that list, this $58 million had Spring Hill Road named by it. It didn't have Lake Bradford Road named by it. It was sold, presented, and given to the public with the word Spring Hill Road, $58 million for all of those things which Mark remembered and refreshed my memory today. So I know, Ben, that you're in a new position. I've been at this table 21 years. I've remembered a lot of conversations at this particular table. And I'm well certain that our leanings were toward the 4-laning of this gateway, its beautification, its expansion to facilitate a flow of traffic from the capital. We're not investing in the name and the status of our state capital if we're not helping to energize and to give a brand new artery to our international airport. We're doing the name. We're not investing, and we may not deserve the state of state capital if we can't invest in the infrastructure that gets our legislators here, our people who come to the football game, come from our airport, go straight down Spring Hill Road, straight to a football stadium. We're underdoing it, but we had made commitments. And I'm asking this body to go back, that we include here today the expansion, the 4-laning of a road that you can't find anywhere in an American city, a modern city, that does not have a 4-lane road going to its international airport. It can't be found. So let us be larger. Let us be an all-American city. Let us do what we told the voters and not to put Spring Hill Road up there for $58 million. We baited and we're switching. FSU, I like what they're trying to do, but I don't like it well enough to leave behind Spring Hill Road, which is an emergency evacuation route for an area of town which traditionally has not gotten a lot of infrastructure. I think that FSU, the state of Florida, and if this is a county road, city road, some money needs to be found now while the bulldozers are out there, lines are being run different places. We need to take care of this. Otherwise, I'm not going to support a bait and switch of a project. And then, too, I want to say that FSU comes in late. We had a blueprint committee, a blueprint process, and now we're seeding after the fact that Florida State desires to come and to preempt, to usurp, and to take over our blueprint process and say, we got this. I think not. Not when it's going to leave Spring Hill Road off. They got roads that don't even have a name on them yet that we're proposing to support. So support the road in existence, the people who traditionally have paid taxes over there, and let's stay committed to the commitments that we made originally for our bicycles, that walking thing, and 4-laning and beautifying Spring Hill Road from Capitol Circle up to Orange Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Deloge, and then Commissioner Daley.
Great.
And Commissioner Dozier.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I look at this as in addition to and as opposed to in lieu of. If I understand the project proposal, and is FSU's coming as a partner, they're going to bring some state funds, some of their money, plus some of our money. And of the ghost of Bob Ratcliffe, I think we get walking trails and bike paths and all the aesthetics with Spring Hill that were originally envisioned, and we get to add into it the whole gateway piece that FSU's kind of coming to the table with. So instead of having one, you have two. So instead of energizing one area of the community, you really broaden the swath, and so the whole south side really gets a makeover, and you've got two great entrances into the community, if I understand the proposal. So I think it's brilliant, and it's not asking for more money, because the reality is I don't think the original Spring Hill plan, if I understand correctly, we haven't bought all the right-of-way, we haven't done everything need to be, so we'd actually have to come out of pocket more. So this opens it up, and if down the road we realize, wow, we should have four-laned it, we can redress that. Nothing tonight is cast in stone, it's directional. So I'd make the motion to accept staff's recommendation as proposed with lots of kudos to FSU for partnering with us on this and working with us on this, because what happens is when you get the city and you get the county and you get Florida State and FAMU all at the table together, we can do cool things like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The motion's been made and seconded. We have Commissioner Daley in line to speak, Commissioner Dozier, and I think the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wholeheartedly support option number one, the recommended action. This is a game changer. This is going to transform the southwest part of our community. It is desperately needed. Florida State has come to the table as a willing partner. They are bringing money to the table, and I believe in their vision. Proud of the university for stepping up, for coming to the plate. I think at the end of the day, what we originally proposed through Blueprint will not only be accomplished, but enhanced by this vision. I think it's desperately needed. I think the impact that it will have on the airport, therefore the impact the airport can have on the area will be completely beneficial. And I agree with Commissioner Deloge. I think that this is in concept right now, and it still might need to be tweaked here and there. However, I'll go on the record. I don't remember a conversation ever about four-laning the road. I don't remember any document. Matter of fact, when we had our briefing, let me ask for the record, have we done a traffic study that proves that it needs to be four-laned?
So a couple thoughts on that. Number one, the Southwest Area Transportation Plan study will look at all of that data.
Okay.
That's part one. And that's about to begin. Part two, if you look, and in conversations with CRTPA, if you look at the traffic counts that exist on that segment of roadway today, and you look at the traffic counts that are sought for four-laning, we are less than half to the magic number that would be required. That's the most recent count data that we have, and that's where we stand today. That does not mean that it won't, as you say, at some point in the future, increase. But as of today, that's where that traffic count data is.
And I can only assume that because of those studies and that traffic count data, that was one of the reasons that led us not to set aside money for acquisition of right-of-way for the possible proposal of a four-lane. Now, having said that, I agree with Commissioner Deloge. In future study, if we need to go that route, I'm prepared to go that route, absolutely. But I think that the recommended option on the table is a great opportunity to bring partners to the table with Florida State and the intergovernmental agency, and I strongly recommend that we approve the option today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dozier, then Mayor Gillum, and Commissioner Scott Maddox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with the comments that have been made. Very much appreciate FSU and the collaboration with Blueprint, CRTPA, City, County over the last year. And I know you've done some outreach. FSU has also to Providence Neighborhood and Innovation Park Board and others that will be impacted by this in a positive way and limit any negative impacts, to be sure. Just to kind of close out one thought on what we voted on. We initiated the Blueprint 2020 process in 2012. It took several years, and my memory is a conversation about whether or not people would actually go down Spring Hill coming from the airport, and I think that the conversation kind of rested as we will see how these studies develop and what the needs are in the future, knowing that we were also going to look at improvements on Orange Avenue. The plan as it has been presented in concept would actually give us 3 really excellent roads coming in from the airport, in addition to Capitol Circle, which is going to be a 4-lane and could handle freight and other investment, which is on our sales tax list as well for, infrastructure around the airport. So we've got the 4-lane there, we've got the foreign trade zone coming in, we've got a lot more effort there. But having Orange, Lake Bradford, and Spring Hill all improved would be great. For me, on Spring Hill, I was never personally in favor. I did think about the 4-lane at one point. It had been raised in some conversation, although I think you're right, Commissioner Daley, we had not voted on it. I lived there for over a year, and I think we've lost pedestrians and bikers on that road in recent years. It is a heavily residential road. And it seems like two-lane with bike lanes and sidewalks is much better. There's a lot of pedestrians on that road that are walking on the side of the road. There are paths cut in. So I would love to see something quick that gives a better pedestrian-friendly road and it's easier to cross. We are addressing our four-lane roads right now, Tennessee Street, others, that people want to cross, and it's too challenging to do that because there's so much traffic. To me, Spring Hill is better for the residents if it's two-lane and improved soon. On the other side, the path that has been proposed, the concept by FSU and with our blueprint and CRTPA staff to come through FSU property, aligning Innovation Park, this is exceptional. This has been under discussion at the Innovation Park Board. City, FSU, TCC, FAMU are all represented on that board, including private sector. Having an opening where people can get closer to the Mag Lab, closer to the research there, and improve Stuckey and Roberts, that will limit, as we develop Innovation Park, and there are plans right now, we've gone through 6 years of restructuring, and right now there are plans by FSU and the park board to invest, and private sector. Danfoss has already expanded their facility. That increases traffic. More traffic through Providence neighborhood, to me, is not the best thing. Having a new road that wraps the park, comes down Stuckey, and connects with FAMU Way is an exceptional way to mitigate that traffic impact on the neighborhood, get ahead of it. We've got a lot of folks, families, others walking through Providence as well. So I think this has added benefits for the neighborhoods, both on Spring Hill and in Providence on Levy, by incorporating this road and the economic development focus of the magnetic task force, other things like that that we've already voted on. So to me, this is a win-win-win, and I don't think this concept would have been on the table in 14 or 12. It has to dovetail with everything we've seen in the last 5-6 years. This is the right time to do it, but all the elements are in place. So I'm really excited about this, appreciate the work, and I think it does help our economic development and airport and the neighborhoods equally in that respect. And it doesn't, as Commissioner Deloche said, detract from anything. I like how you put it, that it is enhancing it or adding to it, not just in lieu of it. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Gillum.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not immune to new details and new information, which is why I think we obviously have to consider what's on the table, and while at the same time recognizing that at least I've been in this government almost 15 years, and Spring Hill Road was talked about from the very, very beginning. Now, the debate on whether it was intended to be 4 lanes or 2 lane is, frankly, to me, was less important than changing the uses along the right-of-way, on either side of the road, rather, the left and the right side of the road. All the conversation I recall was, this is a horrible, looking point of entry into the city coming from the airport. And part of the purpose for the right-of-way acquisition was to get it, we don't do partial taking, so it was to get enough of it that we might change the character of the road as folks enter the city. This option does allow us the ability to accomplish that goal by adding a couple of streets in the mix. But I still think that we got to have some fidelity to the fact that for so long and for so many years, so many folks were under the impression that that area was going to get a bit of a facelift. The road undoubtedly will change some of it, but you're not going to do anything to the uses along the road. What I would be much more comfortable with, particularly after we get much more public input in this change, because it is a big change for a whole group of people, is that we would put in abeyance a significant sum of money. I mean, I think in the neighborhood of maybe 10 million, that allows us some flexibility specifically to this part of Spring Hill Road. Lake Bradford and going forward, I think will be accommodated in some of the changes that are proposed in this on the FSU side, and also on what our city and county staff have been thinking. But I don't want to get further through the public input process and not have any money or resourcing to allow for what I think we will hear from people, which is at some end disappointment and letdown that a change has been made in a process that they believed would result in something otherwise. And I don't think that 10 million is an insignificant number or too significant a number considering what we're coming down off of and what the voters voted for when they believed that that whole right-of-way and that entire stretch of road was going to be significantly improved. So I'll listen to the rest of the comments, but my friendly amendment would be toward that end, that we set aside $10 million to hopefully impact this segment of right-of-way of Spring Hill Road. I don't have an idea yet, and I don't know that any of us do, but I imagine that through this process we might get some. And I don't want to be out of money at the point that those ideas may come to the surface or to the table.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question of Ben, just on point here? I guess I'm a little confused. I thought the 10.8 million was right away for four laning. What's in the 58 million and in the concept right now includes enough room to do bike lanes and sidewalks already. So the improvements on Spring Hill that are in this concept do have bike lanes, sidewalks, the beautification of the road, our blueprint promise. Thank you, Ben Pingree. Yes. But that additional 10 million was simply for the four lanes. So
it was for right of way.
Okay.
And
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, let me just be clear before you answer that, which is the uses is where my issue is, which will not be changed unless we purchase them. Other than that, they're going to continue to, the tire shop is going to be a tire shop. Unless you're proposing to,
I see what you're
unless
saying.
you're proposing to buy it and then convert it to something else.
I mean, the uses of the properties along the way?
Along the right-of-way. Not along the right-of-way, but on either side of the road, the left and the right side of the road. So the idea is should there be an opportunity through this process to improve what that looks like, that we provide ourselves the breathing room to be able to do that. I saw the rendering of the road, and I saw the original one, and I complimented you all yesterday for adding the amenities to both sides of the road, because originally they were not on both sides of the road. It was only one side of the road, because that's what you all said you had room for. So you made that adjustment, and now what I'm saying is I think that I would hope to leave room for additional improvement.
So is that a request for a friendly amendment?
It would be a friendly amendment,
does the
but I'm
maker of
happy
the
to
motion-
withhold it till other comments are made.
Okay. All right, then, Commissioner Maddox, Scott Maddox?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in agreement with much of what has been stated today, but my memory of Spring Hill Road was twofold. Number one, that we wanted it to be the route to the airport. Number two, if it was going to be the route to the airport, we wanted to beautify it as a gateway. Well, number one has been a dismal failure. It doesn't matter what we do in the form of, and I was here when the county commission put the speed bumps there, speed bumps, traffic enforcement, legislative change, threatening withhold of DOT funding, everything. People still go to the airport down Lake Bradford Road. That is why the capacity isn't there to 4-lane Spring Hill, because they go down there, they go down Lake Bradford Road to get to the airport. Traffic is like water moving through pipes. I mean, it's going to find the easiest way to move. And people continue to go that way, and I don't know that we can force them without shutting down the local access only Lake Bradford Road. We can force them to Spring Hill. So with this proposal, not only the incredible added benefits of tying in FAMU Way, of preserving the Providence neighborhood, of opening up what is a hidden jewel in a gorgeous area in the southwest quadrant of our city and county. That aside, if this becomes the route to the airport, we don't need necessarily to beautify Spring Hill unless we just make that decision as a body. The first thing I would say is let's make a decision point difference between 4-laning and beautifying. Commissioner Dozier's point was right on. 4-laning goes to capacity. If we do not have a capacity problem there, just like we pick our top 5 roads for DOT, just like what we go through with our CRPTA process, If we do not have a capacity problem, there's not a need for four-laning. Four-laning flies in the face of pedestrian access, of bicycle access, of neighborhood compatibility, okay? So pushing a four-lane road there is not going to make anyone happy that lives around there. The second thing I would say, as to beautification, I believe the mayor is correct. The only way to truly do that is to buy the uses and change the uses, which will be very expensive. We first should ask the people that are there whether they want to change. And that's part of the public input process. I imagine that we will find that the tire store wants to remain a tire store, that the salvage yard wants to remain a salvage yard, that the tow truck area wants to remain a tow truck area, that the road prison wants to remain a road prison along Spring Hill. If we find that out, perhaps we can use the dollars we have for neighborhood connectivity, for sidewalks, for bike and ped improvements that will help the neighborhoods and the people that live there, and at the same time route traffic down the route that it's already taking and just make it prettier and connect it through FSU's property.
Is there further comments on it? Okay, we do have one speaker, Matthew Latch, I believe, who wanted to speak on this topic. Mr. Latch, your name and address for the record in 3 minutes.
Hi there, Matthew Latch, 1909 Karen Lane. I'm going to keep this brief because there's already been a lot of good and necessary discussion. So I don't want to rain on anyone's parade. I would just like really quickly to address the audience and ask, can anyone from the Providence neighborhood, Bond neighborhood, Callan neighborhood, Villa Mitchell, Stearns Mosley, Caroline Courts, Epps Heights, Azalea Park, stand up please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, at this point we have a motion on the floor that has been made and seconded. Mayor Gillum?
Friendly or hostile, whichever. I'm not sure where the maker of the motion is, but my motion would be to hold in abeyance $10 million.
The maker of the motion.
Move forward with the staff recommendation, but to include holding in abeyance $10 million for future board consideration as to how it might be applied, specifically to the Spring Hill Road section.
Maker of the motion is Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Commissioner Dozier.
I would entertain staff coming back with a proposal to look at that. I'm not sure I want to tie the two together because it looks like then we've absolutely committed to it, because if it comes back and says it's $20 million or we can do it under the current budget, there's some, I think staff and most of us here understand what the hope is for this, but I don't want to tie the two together, would be my take. So if we want to make a separate motion, I'm okay with that, but I don't really feel it's appropriate with the way we've crafted this.
Great.
We're having
yeah, that would be my amendment to the motion.
I don't really understand.
So
there's no second, so
there
it's
is no
fine.
second, so you're good. Okay. Oh,
Madam
all
Chair,
right.
Madam Chair, when,
Commissioner Dozier?
I'm sorry, it
We're
would
back
have to
to
be
the
a
original
substitute.
motion.
Yeah, it would have to be a substitute motion to include that. Is that correct? If the maker of the motion doesn't accept?
Have you
Not
withdrawn
correct.
that for?
It can be an amendment, can be moved as amendment,
Okay.
and then seconded as amendment. You vote on the amendment
You vote
first,
on the
then you vote
amendment.
on the underlying
Okay.
motion.
Madam Chair, if I could ask a question about the amendment here. Looking at the study that we have partnered with CRTPA on is going to be holistic. This is, using the money that has already been set aside, going through the process of exploring all of these different roads and not just Spring Hill and Lake Bradford. And the original did fund Spring Hill and Lake Bradford. It wasn't just Spring Hill. We could expand it later after that study comes back. For my part, I can't support the amendment. I think infrastructure in itself, we see it across the community, will have an economic benefit on property values and investment. It may happen organically. I am open to other incentives in the area, but I'd like to wait for that study to come back.
So you are making a substitute motion. I haven't heard a second to the motion, the substitute. The substitute.
Madam Chair, parliamentary procedure, he's making a motion for an amendment to the motion. And so the amendment's been made and seconded, we'll vote on the amendment,
Right.
then either the motion as amended or not as amended.
Or not as amended, correct. So at this point, all in favor of the motion as amended, signify by saying, right?
The amendment.
The amendment, sorry, the proposed amendment.
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Now the nays.
And those opposed to the motion?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, the motion fails, so now we are back to the original motion, not amended. All in favor of the original motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
I voted against.
It carries,
Yeah,
one
it
vote
carries.
against it.
I want to make sure you know.
I heard you.
voted against.
All right.
Madam Chair, that
Further
concludes your general business. You're now in citizens to be heard prior to adjournment.
Do we have any citizens to be heard at this time on any topic? All right, without further ado, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good meeting.
Thank you, thank you.